Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I showed in a haul video the other day these Arteza EverBlend markers. This is the skin tones, or the 36 portrait tones, and I said I would do a separate video just on these. Y'all know that I like the Arteza EverBlends. They sent me these, and so I thought I would give these a try because I'd mentioned once before about how I like the set of 60 a lot, but you know, there aren't a lot for skin tones in there. And then, unbeknownst to me, there was actually a skin tones set. So it was sent to me, and I did a swatch. You know how I'm about my swatches. So I swatched out all the colors, and to make my swatch, I use the Waffle flower. It's called Color Swatches stamp set, and I use this for watercolor, for like the EverBlend markers, or any other mediums that I may use, whether it be colored pencils or other alcohol markers, or like I said, watercolor, you name it. This is the set that I go to because you can use it for lots of other things. So I used this stamp right here to stamp out all of my squares for my swatches, and then I swatched each of the colors and wrote what each of the colors number was. And that is great just to have so that you can kind of see what may or may not go together, but also the best way to do it is just to experiment. So I actually did that. I stamped this other one down, which is just this one giant stamp here, and then I started doing some coloring, and I actually did some coloring on another piece of paper, just trying all kinds of different combos, and there's a lot more you could come up with, but this is just what I could fit on this little piece of paper, and these ones were the favorites of the ones that I came up with. So I did like A601 and A605, so I liked that stamp just because I was able to combine them up here and then do them separate down below, and the same thing for each one of these. And so I found some really good blends that I like, and I want to make a few cards doing that. So I'm happy with these. I think these are great. I think that there are, if you have the set of 60, you're only going to have, I think, a repeat of one of those colors. If you have the set of 120, you're going to have about 4 of those that are repeats, which honestly I don't think is a bad thing, because skin tone colors are the ones like that I tend to use the most and either need to replace or refill. So it's not a bad thing to have extras. So yeah, with that in mind, we're going to go and actually do a little bit of coloring, and then we'll show you the cards at the end, and we'll talk about more. So see you in a bit. Okay, so let's just jump right into the stamping. I'm going to put a piece of Express-It cardstock into my Misty. This is my mini Misty. And I'm going to grab 2 stamps from My Favorite Things. These are the Butterfly Kisses and For the Birthday Girl. These are recent ones I got, and I thought these would be fantastic since I'm obviously going to be doing skin tones. So we'll get those all lined up, and then I'm going to close the door of the Misty. And then I'm going to ink my images up with Memento Tuxedo black ink. That is a great ink when you're using alcohol markers. And the Express-It cardstock is just a cardstock that I like to use with alcohol markers as well. There are lots of other options out there, but this is one that I particularly like. So I'll ink it up a couple times to make sure that I have a good crisp image. And then we're going to go ahead and get started right on the coloring. I am going to use a couple of the combinations that I have up there. So this first one is the 624 and the 627 combination. I just found that that was the one I liked the most. And so I'll start off with A624. One of the things I've noticed about these particular markers is that they, you know, you put your color down and then you grab another color to kind of go over the top. So I've started with my lighter shade. That's how I like to color. And then I went over it with my darker shade, which is the A627. And it seems really dark. It really does seem very, very dark right at first here. But, you know, and you just kind of got to stick with it. And this is where the playing with your colors really does help. Because, you know, if you didn't play around and you started doing this, you might think, oh my goodness, this is not going to work out. But then you go back over it with your lighter color to blend out a little bit more, and for whatever reason, it just kind of, the colors just start to subdue a little bit, And so what you're seeing right now isn't exactly what you're going to end up with, if that makes any sense. Maybe it's just this particular paper that I'm using, I'm not sure, but I really love the end results. This is why it's always such a good idea to just kind of keep working it until you're happy. And so, you know, you see what you're seeing there is, yes, it's a dark color, but I do like the way that ends up turning out. All right, so now we're going to do one of the lighter shades that we have in there, one of the lighter combinations. We're going to use the 603 and the 613. And even looking at those just on the paper themselves, you would think that those don't necessarily match either. But again, this is why it's so important to kind of play around and see what works best for you and what ends up blending the best. So some of these colors maybe don't look like they might go together, but and even to look at the marker, you know, they just look so close, and then you color on the top and you're thinking, oh boy, that's really dark too. Almost too dark, almost like a little bit of a pinkish color. And so, and I'm not really like, as far as where my light source is coming from, I'm just picking where I think it would look good. But once again, I'm going back over that with my lighter shade, kind of trying to blend that out a little bit, and it just subdues it a little bit more. So when you have 36 skin tone colors like you do in this one, you know, you just have to try. You just have to play around and see what you like best. All right, so now that we're done with those skin tones, we are going to move on to coloring the dresses and their little outfits. I have the set of 60 EverBlends, and as I said before, if you have the set of 60 and you get the skin tones, you will have one overlap. Just one of those colors that you will get a repeat of. But like I've said before, that also isn't a bad thing, simply because you know, these markers are not refillable, which, you know, if you color a lot, you know, that might end up being a problem. But if you are starting out coloring, like if this is your first set of alcohol markers, or even if it's not necessarily, these are just fun to play with. I've been using alcohol markers since early 2008, and I mean, these are fantastic markers to play with. All right, now I'm moving on to the hair, and I'm using A758, which is a really, really dark brown. It's fun when you're looking at the skin tones that I've kind of played around with and come up with, that, you know, you could color this little girl any shade of those. And I don't know, I think that's just one of the fun things about all of us as humans. There are so many different shades of people out there, and it's just incredible. And so you could just have a lot of fun with this set. All right, now I'm kind of doing a stippling effect since her hair looks curly. I'm just dotting, and then I'm going to start dotting, and then I just kind of start circling, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of coloring in circles to try and blend that out just a little bit to soften the color. But I really like the way her hair and her skin look. I think she looks like fun. And then I'll go on to color her shoes. So I grabbed a light gray, and then I'm going to go over that with that black. Typically I wouldn't grab a black, but this is what I have in that set of 60, and I'm just wanting to show you that you can make things work. So I'm make it look like a patent leather, almost like she has some shine to her shoes. And then I'll move on to coloring her little hair bow. I chose an orange. This is the 302. And then I'm going to go over that with a darker color, just to add a little bit of shadowing and shading. And then the package, I'm going to color with a yellow. So we've got that 949. And then once again, I'll grab one darker color just to add a little bit of dimension to it. And other than the skin tones, all these colors that I'm using are just using the set of 60. So a lot of fun. And then I'm going to move on to coloring her dress. I've chosen purples, and these two purples that I have chosen are very far on the spectrum. One of the things I realized while coloring with these is that you really can't do a lot of tip to tip. If you've heard that statement before, you'll see I do try it, because I'll come in with my darker color and even I'm going, wow, that's dark. And so here I am trying to grab some of that tip color and seeing if I can maybe get a softer blend, but actually just coloring just small amounts on there and then blending out with that lighter purple ends up working out just fine. Is that a very dark, drastic, you know, fairly dramatic color? Yes, it is, but I actually don't mind it. I think it looks fine, especially once I go over that with some of that blending. And then I'm going to use that purple just to color her little band, and then her little hair tie, and then the band on her head. And then I end up coloring her shoes, but I also color the purple on the outside of the little butterfly wings. And I don't have a darker purple than that, so a little tip you can use is go in and grab one of your grays. So gray, or even a light brown, and if you're using warmer colors, but a gray, since this is a cool color, would work out fine to add a little bit of darkness to some of those areas. And then I'll use a pink on the inside of her wings. And then I'll even grab a darker pink to bring out some more of the darker, or the shadowing. But I honestly just had so much fun coloring these little girls. I almost wish I had the entire line of these Pure Innocence images, because they're just so fun. And then I color her hair and her shoes, since you'd already seen that with the last little girl. I didn't show you that again. But then doing that, I'm going to that'll finish off our coloring here in just a second. So I will say, if you have any questions, I can do my best to answer those down below. But yeah, I highly recommend these skin tones. All right, so now we're going to move on to just finishing the cards. I figure if we're doing this, we might as well just finish off the cards. So I'm tacking down their matching dies. I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine. And then we will start stamping our sentiment. So I've got a piece of black cardstock. This is some Raven cardstock from Brutus Monroe. And I've used my magic powder bag over that. And then I'm going to stamp down the sentiment just using some VersaMark ink. I'll stamp out one sentiment from each of those sets. And then I'm going to cover that with some Alabaster embossing powder from Brutus Monroe as well. And you'll notice that there is a lot of residue from the magic powder bag, which is not a big deal. That will go away here in a second. So I'm melting that embossing powder. But it's important to use a magic powder bag just to make sure that you don't have stray embossing powder where you don't want it. And now that that's cooled down, I can wipe that away with a microfiber cloth, and then I will trim down my sentiments with my cutting machine, or my Fiskars cutter, and then we'll start assembling the rest of the pieces. My card base is a lunch bag cardstock from Brutus Monroe. I've trimmed down my sentiment a little bit more, and then I'm going to just tack that down with some liquid glue, using my glass mat underneath to secure, or try to keep that a little straight. I also have a little piece of pattern paper, and I do the same thing for both cards really. So I have this strip of pattern paper. This comes from the My Favorite Things Itsy Bitsy Polka Dot 6x6. I have no idea if that paper is still available, but if it is, I will link it down below. I've covered the back of my white piece with some foam tape, and I'm just peeling off that backing paper, and then I'm going to stick that down onto the far left hand or right hand side of my paper. And then I'm going to use that same foam tape on the back of both of my images, and I'll peel off that backing paper and stick that down. And then for a final bit of embellishment, I'm going to grab the Lilac Whisper Nuvo glitter drops that I have. I'm going to actually put those on the wings as well. Just a little strip just outlining those wings. And then I'm going to put 3 dots of that on the lower left. And then I'll also put 3 dots on the upper right. And I, like I said, do the exact same thing with the other card that I make, except just using different colors. And I'll have everything that I used listed down below. So this is the Auburn pearl that I'm using. And I'll tap that down. And then that's going to finish off both of these cards. So I highly recommend the skin tones. If you enjoy your EverBlends and you like to experiment, go ahead and get them. I mean, they're a great deal. I'm going to have them all listed down below. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave that in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by.